Stonewall Columbus Pride started in 1981, but there were people marching in the 70s, and I don't want to forget about those people because it was very important for them to get out there and take the streets and talk about civil rights and be a part of that movement. And even though it wasn't a part of Stonewall's world because we didn't exist yet, it still is a very important part of who we are.
The first parade, nobody knew happened, frankly, and it wasn't very many people. But the second parade, we were beginning to get numbers when we went to the State House. And they had built this platform, which they do for people who are going to be there. And there were troopers standing all around. And so we started the program, and things were going along, and this trooper comes up to me, "Ma'am, we've gotten a telephone call saying there's a bomb underneath their platform." Meanwhile, I went up on top and I said, "I would like everybody to sit down." And then I said, "Now, the trooper has said that somebody called in and said there's a bomb under the platform. And our security has searched under the platform to the best of their ability, and they aren't experts, and we haven't found anything. So what do? Do we stay or go?" "We stay, we stay."
For the first 5 parades always ended with me yelling at the crowd. I would stand up there and there'd be protesters, lots of them.
Yeah.
And I would get up and I'd say, "All right, you see all those ugly protesters over there? Well, we're going to pretend I'm one of them, and I'm going to yell ugly names at you, and you're going to yell back at me, bigot. Are you ready? Faggot." And the crowd would yell bigot. I'd say lesbo, and they'd say bigot, and I'd say queer, and I'd say dyke, and then finally I'd point out and I'd yell, "Good for you."
The very first parade that we put on was a much smaller parade. I think there was maybe a couple thousand people in it, but we had fixed up a van with a stepladder on it. And I was at the top of the stepladder and waving flags coming down, I believe we took Front Street at the time. We got to the State House, which is where they originally used to have it. When we got to the State House and the van pulled over, then all of a sudden 3 eggs go flying by my head.
And I went to my first Pride in 1987, and at that point Pride ended in front of the State House. And there would be political speakers, and we would yell and scream and tell them off. And meanwhile, we would sell pop in the back of a truck to try to make some money for the organization.
Like a lot of people that attend Columbus Pride, I lived out of town. I lived in Southeast Ohio, where there was no gay life, no Pride celebration. I used to look at it in the paper and on television. And I remember when I came up for the first time with a friend, just the freedom that I felt and how accepted and how wonderful it was to be surrounded by the love that Pride brings. I remember how sad I felt when I was back in the car driving down Route 33 to Athens, knowing that I was not going to have this, that I was missing this. Being by the fountain and just being surrounded by the people and the flags and the love and the music, and I literally broke into tears because it said to me in my 40s that I finally felt free, I finally felt accepted, and that's what Pride means to me.
I first marched in Pride in 1996. I have to admit I was afraid to march before then. I went to the parades, but I was afraid to march. I was afraid I'd be fired. I was just afraid. It was a little bit scary.
And the thing I loved about the 1996 Pride was, up to that point it had been called the Gay Pride March. And that year we made the very conscious decision to call it a Gay Pride Parade. And by simply changing it to a parade, it became more of a celebration of who we are as a community. And instead of having national political people coming to speak at Pride, we instead had people like John Waters and Leah Deliria and Suzanne Westenhofer, and it became more entertainment and more of a celebration of us coming together. When you put 10,000s or hundreds of thousands of GLBT people walking down High Street, it is political, whether you call it that or not.
Somehow, and I'm not really sure how this happened, Carla and I became the parade chairs.
And we started talking about the Pride celebration, and Linda started talking about when she was a Westgate, in the drill team. And she started talking about how she loves batons and bands and marching, and then we had another glass of wine, and then she rears back and she says, "I love a parade." Well, that's what we thought she said. But really what she said to Michael Reese was, "I'd love to chair the Pride Parade Committee."
At that time, we were combined with ComFest. So I look up the street and there are all these booths up the street. And I'm thinking, how am I gonna get this parade up this street? And the officer in charge said, at 5 till noon, Linda, they will move those booths back. At 5 till noon, they pulled their booths back. I said, sir, may I start this parade? He said, yes. And I said, dykes on bikes, rev those engines. And off we went.
In 1995, I became the executive director on May 1st, and Pride was happening 7 weeks later. So of course there had been committees up and running for months planning Pride. But the organization was so broke at that point. Sunday, we would all be standing out, the people who worked at Stonewall or the board members, and we would have our megaphones and we were holding buckets. And everybody that walked into Pride, we would ask for donations. And after Pride was over, we all rushed back to Stonewall, rolled the coins, counted the money, and first thing Monday morning, put the money in the bank so the checks did not bounce and we could stay solvent as an organization.
Back in 2002, I had one of my more memorable experiences. I went to visit my car, which was a couple blocks away from the park. I was volunteering that day, and I walk over to my car, and protesters are using the hood of my car to write their big protest signs out. Fast forward these 14 years, I have the festival part of it, and I guarantee you, no 2-block radius are gonna have any protesters writing mean little protest signs. This festival has grown, it's part of the city now, it's part of the culture of Columbus, and I couldn't be more proud of that.
There were thousands and thousands of people, and I'm sitting on top of this golf cart, and I have a megaphone, and the people are coming toward me, and I totally got overwhelmed because there were so many people, and it was so awesome, and everyone was happy, and I had no idea how I was going to separate all these people, and they just kind of parted like a sea around me.
I actually started volunteering back in 2006. I have done the banner for at least since 2010, so I mark it on my calendar every single year.
The other great memory that I have was in 2006, which was Stonewall's 25th anniversary. And so I was picked to ride in one of the antique cars that was in the parade, and Bill rode with me, and we had just the year before gotten legally married in Niagara Falls, Ontario. So we got to ride down the streets of Columbus carrying a sign that said gay and married, got a lot of applause for something I don't think either of us will ever forget.
So many people who just felt free and safe and excited to all be together. Back then it was a little bit different, you know, that was almost 10 years ago. The vibe was different.
It used to be the parade came from Goodale Park, went down to Bicentennial Park. So there were a lot of people in the short north, and then there was no one. And then you get down to about where the old Lazarus was, and there'd be more people, and it was very exciting. So this particular year, we get to the top of a nationwide hill. We see people lining both sides of the street the entire way.
One of my greatest memories of Pride is bringing my daughter down to march in the parade with my wife and I to show our support to a very important part of our community, and to have her see people from all across this community, the region. We draw people from around the country who want to be part of that very special weekend where we celebrate our success, but also rededicate ourselves to equality and fairness and justice. We're a smart, open, and welcoming community, and no weekend better demonstrates that than having your family walk with you in the Pride Parade.
We're all hoping that the rain will kind of go away, but it didn't. The longer it went, the worse it got. So I'm marching with the Chief of Police, Kim Jacobs, and 2 or 3 other police officers. As we're approaching Broad and High, Chief Jacobs turns to me and says, "You know, we're making history, right? This is the first time that police and fire had marched in uniform together in the parade." As we approached the convention center towards the end of the parade, there were some people hollering my name, and I was waving, and it took me a second to realize that's my son. And there was my daughter and my ex. And I turned to the chief and, Kim, look, there's my family. And she thought that was really cool. And then it dawned on me, and I turned to her again and I said, they came in the rain.
We had Shelley Wright, who was a country artist, and we actually had so many folks come from out in the boonies who had never been to a Pride Festival before, and she actually spent, I think, like 2 hours with the meet and greet to talk to every one of them who had a story to tell and how she had helped them in their coming out and that they weren't alone. She hugged them when they cried. I mean, it was a really touching experience.
In 2006, I became the director of Stonewall Columbus. We were still having a one-day festival down at Bicentennial Park. In 2007 is when we went to a 2-day festival, which really expanded our reach in the community. It also created a huge presence for us.
Several years ago, I went to our executive director and asked her if I could be a sponsor of Pride. And as only Carla can do, she said, "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. All the sponsorships are taken." And I said, "You're really not going to take a check for me?" So after we got done chuckling about that, she said, "Well, we have these banners. They're old. They're from a long time ago." Well, it happened to be Pride's 30th anniversary. And I said, "Well, if you've got a new design, I'll do 15 new banners, add it to the 15 old banners, and you'll have 30 banners for your 30th anniversary." And on Pride Day, I was walking down the street, and a young couple walked up to me. And the woman said, "Are you the banner guy?" And I was kind of taken by that because I wasn't prepared for that. And I said, "Well, I guess so." And she said, "I just want you to know, my partner and I, we live in a small city, and we came to Columbus for Pride this year because we can't be out in our city. And we feel so at home here and so welcome, and it's because of these banners." With the Banner Project doing so well, we're going to take all those folks and go from Banner Project to the capital campaign for our new center, Banners to Bricks.
A friend of mine, she looked over at me and she said, "Now, Kelly, this is not a 5K, it is a march, so please don't be speeding along." And I kind of laughed. And then halfway through the march, I thought, it would kind of be a cool idea to have a 5K with Pride. I wanted to kind of open the doors for an entirely different demographic of people, and not just for the LGBT community, but also for the ally community. And I scrambled to get sponsors. I had recently gotten my tax return. I decided, you know what, I'm going to use part of this for it. Any little bit I can do, I want to show them how serious I am. They had a vote and had decided that they were going to change the name of the race from Run for Pride to the Jaeger Run for Pride. So that was a huge honor.
About 6 years ago, my mom and her partner, they started the Five for Pride Spirit Team, which is a group that goes through the festival and through the parade. We sell the merchandise during the parade. We got our friends, we got captains together. About 3 years ago, I took over as chair. My first year, we doubled our results. It was amazing. We sold almost $50,000 worth of merchandise in about an hour and a half. That was probably the best feeling I've had in all the years of volunteering. My best friend, Gina Burnside, she's been volunteering with me since we were both 13. And every Pride, we wear the same rainbow tank top. We may not see each other for the whole year, but Pride, she's there with me, we're wearing the tank top, volunteering together. It's such a part of my life, I couldn't even imagine not having it.
My very first year as Pride Festival coordinator, Carla Rothen said something to me that has stuck with me forever. And she said, no matter how hard it gets, no matter how stressful it gets, always remember that this is somebody's first Pride. All of us remember the amazing feeling we had when we went to our first Pride and looked around us and saw a community and saw others like ourselves. And for many of us, that was a very radical thing. Something like last year where we got rained out. Fortunately, the parade happened. We knew that automatically we would be $150,000 in the red, which is very scary for a community center. The community gathered around us from private donations, bars having fundraisers for us, and a little over a week, that money had been raised back. It shows you the resilience of this amazing community, and I think it shows their dedication and loyalty also to Stonewall.
I am only 25 years old, so I actually wasn't around whenever the original Stonewall was built and created, and the first Pride happened back in 1981. I remember the first time I was able to go to Pride and see my family and all of the people within the community for the first time I wasn't alone. I had people that I could turn to and know that they were going to accept me and understand where I was coming from, and I didn't have to explain myself for the first time.
So what's going to happen in the future when we have our civil rights? Everybody is equal, it's a new day, and we don't have to march anymore. Stonewall Columbus will still be here because we are keepers of that culture. We are keepers of our history, and we are teachers to everyone that comes after us to make sure that they know what struggle we had to go through to be able to march on that street and to be able to fight for our equality. And so we will keep that culture, and we will teach generations for many years to come.
Here's to 35 more years of pride. Thanks, Stonewall Columbus.